Kale walked through the cold stone corridors of his fortress, his armor clinking softly with each step. The torches along the walls cast flickering shadows that danced like restless spirits. Tonight, the fortress was quiet. The war had been long, and his body ached from battles fought under the blood-red sun. Every warrior returning from the front lines knew the weight of exhaustion that followed, but Kale carried more than fatigue. He carried expectation. He had been promised a companion, a mystical beast to aid him in battle. The elders spoke of creatures of immense power, loyal to only one soul. It was said that every warrior of his rank would be matched with a beast that reflected their strength and spirit. Kale had imagined the beast in countless ways: fierce eyes, powerful claws, or wings that could darken the sky. Yet, after years of waiting, tonight was meant to be the night he finally met it. When he opened the door to his private chamber, Kale expected to see the beast waiting, snarling, proud, and magnificent. Instead, he found a woman standing in the middle of the room. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her hair shimmered like strands of liquid silver, cascading over her shoulders in waves that seemed almost alive. Her eyes glowed softly like distant stars, and her skin reflected a light he could not name. She wore garments that flowed around her, almost floating, as though the air itself obeyed her presence. Kale froze. His hand instinctively rested on the hilt of his sword. Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the shock that rippled through him. The woman's lips curved into a faint smile. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice melodic and strangely comforting, "and I have been waiting for you. Fate, it seems, has chosen another path for tonight." She stepped closer, and Kale felt a warmth spread through the room, as though the cold stones had forgotten their chill. Kale's instincts screamed caution. Warriors were trained to expect treachery, to trust only steel and sworn allies, but something in Lyra's gaze made him pause, made him doubt his own fear. "I do not understand," Kale admitted. "Why are you here? What does this have to do with me or my promised companion?" "I come because of a bond you do not yet see, a bond that may decide the fate of your world." It was something foreign, something that challenged his understanding of reality itself. "I do not know what you mean," he said cautiously. "I am a warrior bound to the laws of this kingdom. My path is clear. Your presence here, it is impossible. There are powers in the universe older than humans, older than your world. Powers that have watched over your kind, waited for the right moment. I am here because you were chosen, because your soul is linked not just to a beast, but to the survival of worlds beyond your own." And yet the certainty in her voice, the calm authority in her gaze, planted seeds of doubt he could not ignore. Before he could respond, a low, rumbling growl echoed through the room. Kale's eyes snapped toward the doorway. Shadows shifted, coiling like smoke, and from the darkness emerged the form he had long anticipated, the beast. It was magnificent. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, its fur, or scales, Kale could not tell, which shimmered with an otherworldly light. It moved silently, each step measured, and yet Kale could feel the raw power it carried. The creature stopped a few feet from him, observing him, testing him. Kale's hand tightened on his sword hilt, though he knew he had no need to attack. This was not a mindless animal. It was a guardian, a companion, and perhaps a judge of his worth. Lyra's voice cut softly through the tension. "Do not fear it. The beast is as much a part of you as you are of it, but it will not obey force. It will obey trust." He had trained for battles where life and death hung on a knife's edge, but he had never faced a challenge like this. He stepped forward cautiously, studying the creature's eyes. They were deep, ancient, and full of understanding. The growl softened to a rumble, almost like a greeting. I don't know if I am ready," Kale whispered. "You never are," Lyra replied gently. "That is why you must try. And yet there is more than the beast tonight. There is destiny, and you must choose how you face it." Both seemed to represent paths he had never imagined, one of raw power and loyalty, the other of mystery and unfathomable connection. Kale took a deep breath. "If this is my fate, then I will meet it. I will not step back. The next steps will test more than your strength. They will test your soul." A warmth spread through Kale's body, and for the first time in years he felt something other than exhaustion and pain. He felt connection, something deeper than any bond he had ever known. Lyra's presence seemed to amplify it, her hand brushing the air near his shoulder. "The bond begins tonight," she whispered. "But remember, bonds can be fragile. Trust must grow, and courage must endure." And yet here they were, both waiting for him, both challenging him, both offering him paths he had never imagined. The room grew still. The torches flickered, the shadows danced, and Kale realized that nothing in his life would ever be the same again. He was a warrior, yes, but now he was a part of something larger, something that defied reason, demanded courage, and promised transformation. Outside the chamber, the wind howled, carrying with it whispers of prophecy and destiny. Kale looked at Lyra once more. Her eyes held secrets he could not yet understand, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would follow her even if it led him into darkness. A sudden movement behind him made Kale spin. The beast's growl deepened, and Lyra's eyes widened. Something had stirred beyond the doorway, something ancient and unseen. Kale gripped his sword, ready to face whatever came next. But as he turned, he realized that the real test was not outside the room. It was the choice he would have to make between duty, destiny, and the strange, undeniable pull of the unknown. And in that moment, Kale understood. Nothing would ever be as simple as a warrior and his beast again. The night stretched on, heavy with the promise of trials, the whispers of fate, and the quiet, potent tension between human and alien, warrior and creature, destiny and desire. Kale's heart beat in rhythm with the beast's, and he glanced at Lyra once more. A storm was coming, and he would face it, with sword, with courage, and perhaps with love. The first light of dawn crept through the narrow windows of Kale's chamber, painting the stone walls in pale gold. The fortress was quiet, yet Kale could still feel the presence of the beast and Lyra, both lingering in ways that made the air shimmer with energy. He had spent the night wide awake, unable to sleep, thinking of the strange woman and the mysterious creature that had now become a part of his life. Kale rose from the cold bed, stretching his stiff muscles. The beast sat silently in a corner, its eyes glowing faintly, following his every move. Lyra stood near the window, her silver hair catching the morning light like liquid metal. She watched him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "Did you sleep?" Kale asked cautiously, though he already knew the answer. Lyra shook her head. "Sleep is not for warriors who stand at the edge of destiny, nor for those who are bonded to creatures not yet fully understood." Its fur or scales shifted softly in the dim light, and it let out a low rumble that seemed almost like acknowledgement. The warrior had expected the animal to be wild, uncontrollable, but this creature had intelligence, depth, and a patience that unsettled him. "I do not understand it," Kale admitted. "I expected a beast I could command, something I could fight alongside. Instead, it seems to think, to judge, to test me. And what truth is that?" It was watching him, patient, almost waiting. For the first time, Kale wondered if the creature's purpose was not to fight alongside him, but to teach him. "Then show me," Kale said finally, his voice firm. "If this bond is to mean anything, I will try." Lyra raised her hand, and the air between them seemed to pulse with energy. "Reach out," she instructed. "Do not think of control, think of connection." A spark ran through him, not painful but alive, as though the creature recognized him and accepted him in that single touch. The beast let out a soft growl, not of anger but of acknowledgement. Its eyes met Kale's, and in that moment the warrior felt a strange, calm wash over him. Lyra smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "You are learning," she said, "but this is only the beginning. The bond must grow. The beast will test you, Kale, and you must not falter." The beast moved through the chamber with grace, circling Kale, pressing him to act with instinct rather than thought. It lunged at him, not to harm, but to force him to react, to trust his own body and mind. Kale discovered muscles and reflexes he had never used, responding to the beast's movements as if they were extensions of his own body. Lyra observed quietly, her presence guiding him without words. When he faltered, she would place a hand lightly on his shoulder, her touch steadying him, anchoring him to confidence he did not yet feel. By midday, Kale was exhausted but changed. The bond between him and the beast had begun, small but undeniable. He could feel it in the way the creature mirrored his movements, in the moments when their eyes met, understanding passed between them without a single sound. "You are stronger than you think," Lyra said softly as Kale collapsed onto a stone bench, breathing heavily. "But strength alone will not save you. You must learn to balance power with patience, fear with courage, solitude with trust. The choices you make will ripple beyond this kingdom, beyond your life, beyond this world. I am bound to guide you, though it pains me to do so. There is a cost to destiny, and I have already paid part of it." The idea that this beautiful, alien woman was connected to him in ways he could not yet understand made his chest ache with longing and anticipation. Before he could speak further, a sudden noise echoed through the chamber. Kale jumped, reaching for his sword, but the beast was already alert, its growl low and warning. Shadows shifted near the door, and Kale realized that someone or something had entered. Lyra moved swiftly, her hand raised, her eyes glowing faintly. "Stay calm," she instructed. "Do not act unless necessary. I have been sent to guide you, to warn you. You must be vigilant. Because the path ahead is treacherous. You will need guidance, and there is little time. Darkness approaches faster than you realize." His life had always been filled with battle, but this was different. The battles ahead would not only test his strength, but his heart, his judgment, and his very soul. The day passed in a blur. Kale trained with the beast, learning to move in harmony, to anticipate its actions, to trust instinct over command. Lyra taught him lessons that were not of sword and shield, but of perception, patience, and understanding. He felt himself changing, learning to see the world in a new way, one where connection mattered more than domination, where listening mattered more than striking. As night fell, Kale sat near the fireplace, the beast lying close by, its eyes still glowing softly. Lyra stood near the window, looking out into the dark horizon. "Tomorrow will be harder," she said, her voice quiet. "You will face challenges that cannot be solved by strength alone, and you must remember, trust will be your greatest weapon and your greatest weakness." He had expected an animal, a companion to fight beside him, and instead he had found guidance, mystery, and a bond that stretched beyond understanding. And yet, in the quiet of the chamber, he realized something that both thrilled and terrified him. He was beginning to care. Not just for the beast, but for Lyra, for the strange, beautiful presence that had entered his life and refused to leave. The fire crackled, shadows dancing across the walls. Kale felt a sense of anticipation, a pulse of destiny that thrummed through his veins. Tomorrow the real test would begin. Tomorrow the bond would be tested in ways he could not yet imagine. And somewhere deep within the fortress something watched. A presence older than the kingdom itself, unseen but aware, waiting for the moment to strike. Kale did not yet know it, but the night's peace was only the calm before the storm. The beast's eyes met his, glowing softly in the firelight, and Lyra's voice whispered in the quiet room. "Be ready, Kale. The path ahead is not yours alone, and the shadows are coming." For the first time, he felt both fear and hope, intertwined as if the two were one. He was a warrior, yes, but now he was more. He was a part of a bond that would shape destiny, and the weight of that knowledge pressed upon him like a living thing. And he would face it. The first rays of sunlight barely touched the horizon when Kale and Lyra stepped beyond the fortress gates. The air was sharp and cool, carrying with it the scent of distant forests and unseen rivers. The beast followed silently, its movements fluid and precise, almost gliding across the ground. Kale had begun to understand it better, the unspoken language of its eyes, the rhythm of its steps. And yet, even as he felt growing confidence, a tension lingered, an unspoken warning that this journey would test more than his strength. "We are nearing the ruins," Lyra said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "The place where the curse began, where your bond with the beast will be tested beyond your imagination. I thought this journey was about bonding with the beast. Now there's a curse too. You must face truths that warriors often avoid: fear, doubt, and the choices that define the soul." The ruins rose before them like a fragment of some forgotten age. Stone towers lay half-buried in moss and vines, crumbling under the weight of centuries. Shadows clung to the arches and broken walls, and a silence hung in the air that seemed almost alive. The beast growled softly, sensing something Kale could not yet see. "Be careful," Lyra whispered. "The guardians here are not of flesh alone. They are shadows of memory, echoes of power. They will test your heart as much as your body." As they moved deeper into the ruins, the first test came. A vision shimmered before them, a figure of Kale himself, standing in the center of a burning battlefield. He raised his sword, but the faces around him were familiar, friends, comrades, even innocents, and yet he could not save them. The beast growled low in warning, and Kale's own reflection in the vision seemed to turn toward him, eyes glowing with accusation. "This is a vision?" Kale asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Lyra said. "It is one possibility, one shadow of what may come. The curse reveals the paths you fear the most. To face it, you must accept that even warriors can fail, even strength can falter. And yet, you must move forward." Kale opened his eyes to see the beast standing tall, its eyes shining with a light that mirrored his own determination. Lyra's hand brushed his shoulder, a silent gesture of pride and reassurance. But there was no time to linger. A second challenge arose almost immediately. Shadows began to coalesce along the walls, forming shapes that were both human and monstrous. They moved in patterns that suggested intelligence, striking at impossible angles. Kale's sword met the first shadow with a clang, but others pressed forward relentlessly, testing not only his skill but his patience and perception. "Do not fight blindly," Lyra called, her voice carrying across the ruins. "Feel the rhythm of the shadows. They are a reflection of your own fears. Do not strike out of anger, strike with understanding." For the first time, Kale felt a strange exhilaration. He was not just surviving the test, he was learning. The bond with the beast deepened with every movement, every shared glance, every silent communication. And Lyra's presence, her guidance, her calm confidence gave him a courage he had never known. Yet, as the final shadow dissolved, a deeper danger revealed itself. The heart of the ruins began to glow with a faint red light, pulsing like a living thing. Kale felt it in his chest, a pull that was both magnetic and unsettling. Lyra's voice was urgent. "This is the core," she said. "The source of the curse. If we are to break it, you must confront it alone and yet not alone. Trust in the bond you have formed. Trust in the beast. Trust in yourself." Kale closed his eyes and let the connection guide him. Memories of battles fought, friends lost, victories won, all of it surged within him. But he did not fight with anger. He did not resist with force. He simply moved in harmony with the beast, letting the bond channel his will and focus. Lyra's eyes glowed softly. "Now," she whispered, "face the heart of the curse." The red light pulsed faster, brighter, and he felt a pressure, as though the ruins themselves were breathing against him. He extended his hand, and the beast mirrored the motion. The moment their hands and paws touched the glowing heart, a wave of energy surged outward. Kale felt visions of the past, of the prophecy, and of choices he had yet to make, all spinning around him. And then Lyra's hand found his, steadying him. "You are not alone," she said. "Do not fear the path. Fear is only a shadow. Courage is the light that defeats it." The shadows dissipated completely, leaving the chamber quiet, empty, and still. Kale sank to his knees, exhausted but victorious. The beast lay close by, panting softly, its eyes reflecting his own relief. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with pride and something else, a quiet, tender emotion that made Kale's chest tighten. "You did it," she said softly. "The curse is weakened but not gone. There will be more tests, more trials, but today you have shown strength not just of body but of heart." A low, almost mournful howl came from the shadows beyond the walls. Kale's heart skipped a beat. The beast growled in response, eyes narrowing. Lyra's expression grew serious. "That is the warning. The enemies of your kingdom are aware of your bond now. They will come, seeking to use the beast's power for their own gain. And Kale, you will have to protect what you have fought so hard to form." He looked at Lyra, her presence calm yet commanding, and realized something important. This was no longer just about survival or duty. It was about choices, about trust, about the bonds that defined a man. And for the first time, he was willing to fight not just with steel, but with heart. The ruins lay silent once more, but the tension in the air remained. Kale knew that the challenges ahead would test every part of him, his strength, his wisdom, his courage, and his heart. And he would not face them alone. The beast pressed against his side, warm and steady. Lyra's hand brushed his, a quiet reminder that he was not alone. Together they would face the shadows, unravel the mysteries of the curse, and meet whatever destiny awaited them. The night was coming, but Kale no longer feared it. He was a warrior, yes, but he was also something more now. He was bonded, tested, and ready for the trials that lay ahead. And somewhere deep in the darkness beyond the ruins, the Watchers waited, patient, relentless, and aware of the bond that had begun to form. Kale did not yet know the full danger, but he knew one truth. His journey was only beginning. The shadows were moving, the prophecy was unfolding, and the bond between human, beast, and alien was stronger than ever. Kale returned to the fortress under a sky heavy with clouds. The wind carried the scent of distant rain, and the distant mountains were shrouded in mist. He felt different now, stronger, more focused, and connected, not just to the beast, but to Lyra, who had been with him through the trials of the ruins. Yet even as he felt this growing confidence, a shadow of unease lingered. Something was stirring within the kingdom, something that would challenge not just his strength, but his heart. The moment he entered the main hall, Kale sensed the tension. Soldiers whispered in corners, eyes darting toward him. Courtiers murmured in hushed tones, and even the elders who had once guided him seemed wary, their expressions clouded with concern. Kale frowned. "What is happening?" he asked one of the guards. "Trouble, my lord," the guard replied quietly. "There are rumors, enemies speaking of your bond with the beast. They say it is unnatural, dangerous." Some fear that your companion might turn against the kingdom, that you are no longer loyal. They are testing you, Kale, some with fear, some with envy. Remember, trust begins with you. Do not let doubt cloud your judgment. The elders and nobles were seated in a semicircle, their faces solemn, their eyes filled with scrutiny. The air was heavy, every word measured, every glance a question. Kale, the high elder began, his voice steady but edged with concern, we have received troubling reports. Your bond with the beast and your connection with this woman, he glanced at Lyra who stood behind Kale silently, have caused unrest. There are those who question your loyalty to the kingdom. Some say the power you wield is too great, too unpredictable. The beast is not a weapon for destruction. It is my companion, as was promised. Lyra is not a threat. She has guided me, helped me understand forces beyond our understanding. She is no enemy of the realm. If the beast or this alien woman were to betray us, the kingdom would fall. We cannot take that risk. Do not falter, she whispered. Your truth is stronger than their fear. Trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned through deeds and courage. That night, as Kale returned to his chamber, the fortress trembled with unexpected movement. Shadows flitted along the walls and whispers carried through the corridors. The beast growled low and warning. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They are coming, she said softly. Those who wish to exploit the beast's power, they have found a way into the fortress. We must be ready. The shadows were more than soldiers. They were agents, trained to manipulate, deceive, and strike at weakness. Kale's sword met theirs with precision, the beast flanking him, moving with intelligence and agility beyond any ordinary creature. Lyra followed, her presence guiding him, her knowledge of the unseen forces around them proving invaluable. Yet the attack was not just physical. Some intruders whispered spells, enchantments meant to confuse, to turn the warrior against his own instincts. Kale's vision wavered, his thoughts clouded, and for a moment he feared he might falter. Lyra's hand found his arm, steadying him. Focus on the bond, she urged. Trust the beast, trust yourself. Trust us. When the last enemy was driven back, the fortress was silent once more. Kale's chest heaved, exhaustion and relief mingling. The beast sat beside him, eyes soft with satisfaction, while Lyra's hand lingered lightly on his arm. You have done well, she said, her voice gentle. But the danger is not gone. There are those who will return, stronger and more cunning. And Kale, there are choices you will have to make that will test not just your strength, but your heart. Days passed and the fortress remained on edge. Whispers continued, and Kale felt eyes watching him at every turn. The council's suspicion lingered, even as his deeds proved his loyalty. Lyra remained by his side, guiding him, offering counsel, and silently teaching him the deeper truths of courage, trust, and love. Kale began to understand that the bond with the beast was not simply about strength, it was about balance. The beast mirrored his fears, his doubts, and his desires, and through it, he learned patience, empathy, and understanding. He also began to see Lyra not just as a guide, but as someone who challenged him, inspired him, and stirred emotions he had long buried under the armor of duty. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Kale and Lyra stood on the balcony of his chamber. The beast lay nearby, its head resting on Kale's boots, eyes half closed in quiet contentment. The threats are growing, Lyra said softly, but so are you. You have learned to trust, to lead, and to protect. Yet there will come a moment when you must choose between duty and desire, between fear and love. The path ahead will demand everything from you, strength, heart, and trust. And Kale, you are not alone. A sudden noise from the corridor broke the moment, a shadow moving against the light, a whisper of danger. Kale's hand went to his sword, the beast rising immediately, muscles tense and ready. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They are testing us again, she said, her voice calm but urgent. The enemies are persistent. And Kale, the next challenge will test not just our strength, but our bond. As darkness fell over the fortress, Kale stood tall, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, yet tempered by the bond that gave him strength. The shadows were patient, the enemies cunning, and the trials far from over. But Kale understood one truth. The bond he had formed, the trust he had earned, and the connection with Lyra and the beast would be the force that carried him forward. And somewhere in the depths of the fortress, eyes watched, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kale did not yet know what choices awaited him or the cost they would demand. But he would be ready. The storm was coming, but he was no longer alone. The fortress lay in uneasy silence. A storm had gathered over the mountains, the clouds dark and heavy, lightning flashing across the sky. Kale stood on the balcony of his chamber, the wind tugging at his hair and cloak. The beast crouched nearby, muscles coiled, eyes alert, reflecting the flashes of lightning. Lyra stood beside him, her silver hair dancing in the wind, her expression calm but filled with quiet determination. "Kale," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying over the roar of the approaching storm, "the final challenge is here. The enemies you have feared, they will come with everything they have, and the curse, though weakened, will try to sway the beast to turn your bond into chaos." He had endured tests of courage and heart, learned to trust, and formed bonds that now defined him. Yet this final trial felt heavier than any battlefield he had known. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Figures emerged from the darkness, cloaked and armored, eyes glowing faintly with malicious intent. They moved like shadows, silent and precise, surrounding the fortress with an unnatural speed. Kale drew his sword, the beast growling low in warning, its glowing eyes reflecting the stormy sky. Lyra raised her hands, channeling a soft light that rippled through the air. "Do not fight alone," she whispered. "The bond you have forged is stronger than their fear, trust it." Kale met them with precision, the beast flanking him, moving as if they were one being. The storm above seemed to respond, thunder echoing with the rhythm of their battle. Kale realized that this fight was not just physical. It was a test of his heart, his judgment, and the strength of the bonds he had formed. Every attack required trust, every movement required understanding, every moment demanded courage beyond muscle and steel. Yet even as they fought, the curse stirred. Shadows coalesced from the edges of the battlefield, twisting and writhing with malevolent energy. The beast growled, eyes narrowing as the shadows tried to reach into its mind, to turn its instincts against Kale. The creature stumbled for a moment, muscles tensing unnaturally, and Kale felt panic rise. "Focus!" Lyra's voice rang clear, cutting through the chaos. She stepped forward, her hands glowing, a protective aura spreading around the beast. "Remember the bond, fear is a shadow, trust is your light." He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth and intelligence of the creature flow into him. The bond they had nurtured over weeks of trials flared brightly, a pulse of energy that pushed back the shadowy influence. The beast steadied, muscles relaxing, eyes glowing with clarity. Together they moved as one, striking with precision, pushing the intruders back step by step. Amid the battle, Kale caught sight of Lyra confronting a figure cloaked in darkness at the far edge of the storm. Energy crackled between them, a struggle of wills. He knew instinctively that this figure was the source, the orchestrator of the curse, the one who sought to exploit the beast's power. Kale shouted, "Lyra, we fight as one." "Trust me." The battle reached a crescendo as Kale and the beast confronted the figure. Shadows writhed violently, trying to separate them to break the bond. But Kale reached deep into the connection he shared with the beast and Lyra, allowing courage, trust, and loyalty to flow through him. A pulse of energy surged outward, brighter than lightning, scattering the shadows and revealing the figure beneath, a dark mage, desperate, powerless against the unity before him. Lyra's voice rang out, soft yet commanding. "Kale, now the curse can be ended only through trust and courage. Do not falter." But instead of striking, he placed his hand over the mage's chest, channeling the bond, the energy of trust and understanding. The mage screamed, but not with anger, his power dissolved, transformed by the unity and courage of the three. The shadows evaporated, leaving only silence and rain-soaked ruins. Kale fell to his knees, exhausted but victorious. The beast nuzzled him, warm and alive, while Lyra knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "It is done," she said softly. "The curse is broken, the threat defeated. Your bond at your heart has prevailed." He had not expected an alien woman, guidance beyond understanding, and challenges that tested every part of him. Yet here they were, alive, connected, triumphant. Lyra's hand lingered lightly on his, and Kale felt a warmth spread through his chest that no battle had ever brought. "Kale," she whispered, "you have grown not just as a warrior, but as a man who can face fear, trust others, and embrace what destiny has given you. And yet it was you who chose to trust, who chose courage, who chose love in all its forms. That is why the bond succeeded." It had been a long journey, from the moment he found Lyra in his chamber, to the trials of bonding with the beast, to the ruins and the curse, and now to this victory. Kale felt something he had not in years, peace, a sense of completeness, of understanding, and of connection that went beyond strength or skill. The beast rested at his side, its eyes bright, calm, and full of trust. Lyra's hand remained near his, a constant reminder of the bond that had formed between them. "Kale," Lyra said softly, "there will be more challenges in the world, but whatever comes, you now have the courage, the wisdom, and the bond to face it." Together, Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, Kale allowed himself to see the depth of his feelings, not just admiration, but something deeper, something that had grown through fear, trust, and shared trials. He reached for her hand, and she accepted it, their fingers intertwining naturally without hesitation. The beast shifted, nuzzling Kale's side, acknowledging the bond that had now become unbreakable. Kale smiled, feeling the warmth and strength of the creature flow through him. He realized that the warrior he had been, the man who relied only on strength and skill, had been transformed. Now he was a man who understood courage, trust, and love. And as the sun rose higher, painting the fortress in golden light, Kale understood the true meaning of destiny. It was not about battles won or enemies defeated. It was about bonds forged in trust, about courage in the face of fear, about hearts opening to connection and love. Lyra's voice broke the quiet. "Kale, there is a world beyond this kingdom, one that awaits us. The bond we share is not bound by walls or forests. If you choose, we can face it together. Together we face whatever comes." As they turned toward the horizon, the fortress behind them, Kale understood one truth. Destiny is not a burden. It is a journey shaped by the bonds we choose to honor, the courage we choose to wield, and the love we choose to embrace. The storm had passed. The curse was broken, and a new dawn awaited, bright, limitless, and full of hope. Kale, Lyra, and the beast stepped forward together, ready to face the world, and whatever else destiny had in store. The wind whispered through the ruins, carrying a quiet promise. The journey was far from over, but they would face it united, transformed, and unbroken.